Looks like it's recording.
All right, welcome everybody to the Fall Workshop for Lake District Treasurers webinar. I'm Mike Engelson. I'm the Executive Director of Wisconsin Lakes. I'll be working behind the scenes running the Zoom for us today. I'm joined by Eric Olson from Extension Lakes, and our main presenter today will be Dan Butkus, who is on the Board of Directors of Wisconsin Lakes. And Dan has done a fantastic job helping us out with Lake District questions, and he can give a little bit of his background, I'm sure, when he starts talking. Just a few housekeeping things to begin with. You have all been muted just to help keep things moving along. We will have questions at the end. We may be able to open things up at that point. But if you have questions while we're going on, there is the chat, and Eric has posted in the chat, so you should be able to see where that is. I'll be posting some links in there as we go along as well. And then this is not the only workshop and webinar that we do, so do pay attention to wisconsin.org and our emails and news from Extension Lakes as well, as we'll have more webinars coming up in the coming months. And I especially wanted to bring attention to Wisconsin Water Week, which is our new version of the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention. We are going to be online again next year, but it's going to be much bigger than it was in the past, and you'll be able to get more information about that as we develop it. But it's a little bit earlier than it has been in the past. It's March 8th through the 12th, 2021. Can't believe that it's already 2021, but it is. And you can find more information about that on both on wisconsinlakes.org and on the Extension Lakes pages. So with that, unless one of you tell me that I've forgotten to mention something.
I'm just putting something in the chat. Again, I wouldn't say there's a big master plan for how to put these together. We're trying to respond to things that are maybe timely and things that affect more than one lake organization at a time. We'd love to hear your ideas. So I just put in the chat my email address and Mike's email address. Feel free to shoot us an email and let us know of other topics that you want to handle. Kind of in way of introductions to Dan Butkus, we usually organize as part of the convention some Lake District board member workshops. These would normally be in person at usually at Stevens Point, and we would bring folks in. People would sign up, half-day workshop on introduction to Lake Districts, or a half-day workshop on maybe some advanced topics or open meetings law and things like that. And part of why we did that was because it's convenient. Everybody's in Stevens Point, so why not add these workshops on? Since we're not meeting in Stevens Point, we realize now we can do things in a different way. And in talking to Dan last spring, it kind of came up like, a lot of things really have to happen in the fall after your annual meetings are done. And these are sometimes technical, but just certainly procedural steps that need to be followed pretty closely if you want your Lake District to comport and fit in with other local units of government and then the State Department of Revenue. And so we kind of thought, it'd be good to just do a kind of a quick refresher of this stuff in the fall and make sure folks are on the right path and see what kind of questions you're coming up with in your local lake organizations. Again, this is mostly geared towards lake districts. If anybody is here from a lake association, the stuff doesn't necessarily apply to you, but if you're considering a lake district, these are probably things you'd want to start thinking about anyway. Dan, in addition to being a board member on Wisconsin Lakes, has been sort of a very engaged and enlightened person helping his lake district both form and now get operating up in Oneida County. This is the Squash Lake Inland Lake Protection District. I probably got that wrong. Dan, correct me. I know it starts with the.
I had something happen to my screen where I have this need resources using Zoom during COVID-19 pandemic, and I don't have the regular Zoom screen. I just have you guys showing up, so I'm not sure I know what the heck happened here.
Do you see something on the bottom that says share screen?
No.
Mike, you have a backup of his slides, right?
I do.
I can sign out and sign back in again.
I think we got you in here. So as long as we can hear you, and maybe you can, if Mike can bring up the slide.
Yeah, and it's just really weird, and I'm so sorry. I did not touch my computer. I swear, I did not touch it. And all of a sudden just popped up this, Zoom is trying to be helpful and interrupting my screen.
And I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I don't think anybody else is getting.
Oh, there we go. I've got it. I fixed it. Sorry.
Oh, you did? Okay, I'll stop sharing
Yep.
then.
Okay.
Actually, I never started, so
You never started.
you never started, so
So-
you should be good.
Yep. So yes, Eric, our Lake District, getting back to your original comment, our Lake District is the Squash Lake Protection and Rehabilitation District. It's the one I'm treasurer of. We were formed back in 2017, and so basically 4 years ago we were petitioning at this time to become a Lake District, and we were formed back in March of 2017. So relatively young, and at being a district commissioner, but with the thanks, my thanks to Eric and to Mike, we've come a long way. We've learned a lot. So I know that they were appreciative of my input, but honestly could not have gotten here without help from them and from other lake districts. And so honestly, I urge everybody, if you know of another lake district, don't reinvent the wheel, ask people. Most people are more than willing to share.
Hey, Dan, we're still not seeing anything if you've shared your...
No, I have not shared.
Okay, all right.
So in the spirit of sharing, Dan.
And so in the spirit of sharing, there we go. And I will pull this up as presentation mode, if it will do it. There we go. So welcome, everybody. Thank you. This is when Mike told us how many people were signed. Honestly, I was, I'm amazed that there's such a big interest. And I think a lot of people, it caught their attention. It's like, yeah, we now have a budget. What the heck do we do next? And that is really the crux of what Eric came to me with was, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea to go over some of the things that, now that people have an approved budget, the work doesn't stop there, things kind of move forward, and you've got some filings and important dates coming up. So what I want to cover today is just timing of some of the more common forms that are required. I've got some examples of forms, and you're going to see Squash Lake all over these forms because I just scanned them in and put them in the presentation. I've got some information about accessing the Wisconsin Department of Revenue website, and I'll explain why that's important in a little bit. And then the timing of the tax settlements and miscellaneous related items, things that will come into your Lake District, especially to the treasurer, that need a response. So the last time I did this back in the spring, I was fairly dry, trying to inject some humor. So, your budget process is over. You did a little bit of this, which was sitting down with pencil and paper, calculator, spreadsheet, what have you, and by guess and by golly, try to come up with things. And if you're like me, you're a little bit like Professor Trelawney looking into a crystal ball going, okay, I think this is the budget. So it's a little bit of both. And you get to the annual meeting, and hopefully everyone has given your budget a thumbs up. And it's now past September 8th, which is the window for holding district meetings generally. And you think it's over, or is it? Continuing with a little bit of humor, unless this happens to your budget, but that's a whole other conversation. And yes, I'm a little bit of a sci-fi freak, so yeah, you get the idea. But this actually did happen to me once. It's not fun, but sometimes it happens. But on the serious side, then comes the paperwork. And there are things you may have heard. If you've been doing this for a while, you're familiar with some of these. And if you're new to this, this is alphabet soup time. So you've got the PC 505, a tax levy report, boundary change form, 1099 miscellaneous, W-2s, W-3s, the list goes on. But we're not going to talk about all of these. Most of the federal and state forms they're fairly standard, and you may know about them, but we're going to try to deal with just the ones that are specific to lake districts. But more importantly, everybody wants to know, when is the money coming? You're a taxing authority, you do all this preparation, you do a budget, and it's now what's the schedule? And thankfully, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue has a calendar of events, and they actually put down when you can expect your tax settlements, when you can expect certain forms. But briefly, and I know this doesn't look briefly, some of the more important filings, especially coming up right away, October 16th and often as early as October 1st, the Special District Apportionment Form, also known as the PC 505, is available from the Department of Revenue. And that's if your lake district does a mill rate levy. If you're doing special assessments and special charges, you need to talk to your county treasurer's office for the due dates, and they may differ from county to county. Oneida County, where we're at, we have a couple of lake districts that use the special charges to charge a flat fee as opposed to a mill rate levy. Their timing for the special charges is pretty much the same as what we're going to talk about here, but just be aware that your county may be a little bit different. They may have different requirements. And some counties only require that if you're doing a special charge, that you notify them of the special charge or special assessment, and they'll input it into the program. Again, Oneida County does it this way. They used to do it where you had to fill out a spreadsheet for every parcel and put down the special charge and then send that back in. It's now become a little bit more automated, but not every county has the same program set up. So this is very important. If you're doing special charges, you really need to talk with your county and find out what they need from you and make sure you understand their timetable. Come November 1st, there's what's called a tax levy letter or report, and that needs to be sent to the towns. A copy of this letter is usually sent to the county treasurer and or the real property department, and in Oneida County, they're also called Land Information Office. And they like you to include a copy of the PC 505. November 15th, the PC 505 electronic submission is due with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. This is one thing that I've always found amazing and a little amusing. So they make the PC 505 available in October. You've got to tell the towns what the tax levy is by November 1st using the PC 505, but you don't have to submit the 505 to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue until the 15th of November. It seems a little backwards, but that's a quirk of their system. Coming to the federal forms, you've got IRS forms 1099, 1099 miscellaneous. If you've got regular employees, W-2s and W-3s, and Wisconsin W-7. Come February, March, the special district boundary change form is issued by mail from the Department of Revenue, and it's due back. They have a schedule, doesn't always meet their calendar, but you'll know it when you see it. And that you only get that change form if you've detached or attached a parcel to your district. So we knew nothing about this. The first year we had someone who wanted to detach their parcel from our district. So we went through the whole process, followed Chapter 33, sent everything in, and then all of a sudden the Department of Revenue sends us a change form. Had no idea what it was until it showed up on our doorstep. Around April 3rd, and this is in odd years only, the Department of Revenue asks that you update your district contact information. So that would be your commissioner's usually name, address. I don't believe they ask for a phone number, but they might now. And this, let's see if I can actually get this to do it. There we go. Normally I get out of control with increasing and decreasing the size of my screen. So I was talking about the PC 505, the district apportionment form when you have a tax levy rate. Yeah, this is accessible, and I'll show you where in the Department of Revenue website. But you go in, put in your information about your district, fill out down here where the little hand is. If you can see my icon of my hand, which disappears, that was our total tax levy that was going to be assessed for this year, $16,750. You have to enter in your name, phone number, an email address, and any comments that you're basically attesting to the fact that you are the right person and you're authorized to fill this form out. So when you fill out the form, let's see if I can, oh, come on. See, I told you I got crazy with this. Because I realized that this is kind of small, but there's a second page and it automatically fills in the information for you. Our lake happens to be in two different towns, town of Crescent and town of Woodboro. They each have their equalized value apportionment of our district that's in both of those towns, figures out the percentage and calculates how much is to be collected from each town for your district. And in the case here, town of Crescent was collecting a little over $9,000 for us, and the town of Woodboro was collecting a little over $7,000. Okay. And I'm going to play around with zooming again, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to mesmerize you with zooming and unzooming. That information goes into what's called a tax levy report or letter. And I'll be very, very honest. This looks really officious. The very first year we did this, I had no idea what I was doing. I asked our town clerk, one of our town clerks, for some guidance, and she said, "Oh, here's Nicolay College's letter that they send us." And so I just plagiarized their letter heavily. But in it, it's basically an affidavit. You're attesting to the fact that you're the treasurer of whatever district, that you've gone through the process of approving the budget, approving the tax levy, and by the way, town of Crescent, here's how much you're collecting on our behalf. And that shows up down here in that $9,300 figure. There's some other stuff there. Just making sure that the information is complete. We've had people, our county and our towns like to see us put our total equalized valuation for the entire district and then what the valuation is for that town on this letter. And then this letter has to be notarized. So before you sign it, take it to your friendly bank, get it notarized, and then send it off to the town clerk as well as the county treasurer. And if your land information office wants a copy, send it to them as well.
And Dan, somebody asked about that. You get it notarized, I'm assuming, because that's what the government says, that it's a form that needs to be notarized?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
It is, I should know this in chapter 33, but it does say that it needs to be a certified or notarized letter. And I do, believe it or not, Mike knows this, I have chapter 33 in a binder sitting right next to me. So
I'm honestly not sure why he even has it in a binder, because I'm pretty sure he has it entirely memorized. And possibly,
no, that's Eric.
Possibly has music composed for it as well.
No, Eric is the one who has it memorized.
Dan, we're also getting
Yes.
a little bit of a interference on your microphone. It almost sounds like you're in the wind.
Oh, I know what that is. Hold on. I'm excusing myself for just a moment. I have there's a fan on in the office. And it happens to be blowing right at me. There we go.
Yep, that seems like it took care of it. So thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Before I move on, are there any other questions that you've got regarding the tax levy report or anything else like that? Okay. Oops. fast finger. So I mentioned earlier, one of the other forms that you may get if you detach or attach a parcel into your district or out of your district is the special district boundary change form. This one came back in 2018. The date on this is February 9th, and they wanted it back within a month. So in this case, we were given the option, your boundaries have not changed, which is kind of weird because when we detached the property or parcel, we had to resubmit everything to the Register of Deeds with a new boundary, written boundary and a new map. Land Information Office got notified. They notified the Department of Revenue. So it seemed kind of weird that they gave us the option of, no, our boundaries haven't changed, when in fact, they know they did. So what they like you to do is just mark it, sign it, email, phone number, and include a map. And I don't believe I included the legal description for our boundary with this. I just included the map and explained what happened and why. And the Department of Revenue has never come back and made a fuss over it, so I assume we did it right. As far as accessing the Wisconsin Department of Revenue website, you can access the government portal, and no WAMS ID is needed for that. Those of you who input things into SWIMS for the DNR, especially for Clean Boats, Clean Waters, are familiar that you have to have a WAMS ID to do that. But that's right here is the link. I actually do have it as a saved page on my browser because I go to it frequently. There you can sign up for the Wisconsin Department of Revenue notices for special districts. They'll send you regular emails saying, hey, this is coming out, or hey, this is what's happening. And I found it very useful. You can also access and file the PC 505 form under special districts. But you may need to have a WAMS ID if you do any of the following things. If you have to file a 1099 or 1099 miscellaneous, W-2, W-3, the Wisconsin WT-6 and the WT-7, because you have regular employees, there you need a WAMS ID, and the Wisconsin Department of Revenue is requiring that all these tax forms, including the 1099 miscellaneous, be filed with the state electronically through their web portal using WAMS. So, and that began in 2019. I didn't realize this until almost too late this past year, and realized, oh, I have to file this electronically. I just can't send it in. So this is one of these things where learn from my mistakes. Don't don't let this slip. But here's what that portal looks like. Let's see if I can, come on, zoom in. Just trying to do this a tad more. And there, that's as good as it gets. So in that portal, there's a schools, technical colleges and special districts heading, and you see that here at the top. If you click on that, it'll take you right to this page. Over here on the right, where it's circled in red, that's where you can access the PC 505 form. Right now, the 505 form for 2019 is showing up. Like I said, the 2020 won't show up until early October. You know, there are some other things. You've got the sidebar, recent news. It's all pretty dry stuff, honestly. But down at the bottom, under special districts, you can access your certificates of equalized value for the district. There are also special district, I'm having a hard time reading this on my screen. The certification of equalized values are two different forms. And then down here in the lower left, where the red arrow is, They've got upcoming calendar events, and obviously I pulled this off of their website back in July and put this on the presentation, but that updates regularly. And I just did it again. Sorry, folks. My touchpad is really sensitive. Continuing on, the federal forms, using the WAMS ID to be able to file the W-2s, W-3s, WT6, WT7, 1099, again, alphabet soup. You can come in here. I was fortunate enough, I have a WAMS ID because I have an S corporation that I own and have to file all those great forms already. And so I just used my WAMS ID and linked our district to it. When I'm no longer treasurer, someone else is going to have to get a WAMS ID and do this. But down here in the lower right, it says enter your W-2 and 1099 information. And that's just where you need to go and to log that in. Oops. Do we have any other questions coming in, Mike?
Hey, this is Eric. We do have a question just to clarify about your use of a notarized letter and how that relates to statute. Statute calls for a certified letter, or it specifically says a report shall be delivered by the treasurer by certified statement to the clerk of each municipality having property within the district for collection. Is it just understood that that would mean a notarized letter, or how did you come to the conclusion that it should be notarized?
I asked other lake districts, and I asked our town clerk, and
Sure.
she
So,
said,
like,
and because technical colleges, special districts, and lake districts all are lumped into the same category in the Wisconsin Department of Revenue,
sure.
then I just followed suit what the technical college in Rhinelander had done, which was send a notarized letter. Yeah, I was trying to get I recall now I was trying to get a definition of what a certified letter meant.
Right.
And everyone just said, oh, notarized.
Sure.
You know, because it really is in the form of an affidavit that you're attesting to the fact that you are who you are. You're signing it in front of somebody who, you know, you've shown proof of ID to certify that you're the one submitting the information.
Sure. Then someone else asked, what triggers the requirement to file a 1099?
I'm going to get this wrong. We file 1099 miscellaneous. We contract independent divers to harvest Eurasian water milfoil. I can't remember the threshold. There's a threshold. It's $400 or $500, or is it $600? If you're above that amount that you've paid an independent or self-employed person, then you have to file a 1099 miscellaneous. And our divers, you know, they get paid several $1,000s every season, each of them. So it's a no-brainer. They automatically get a 1099. But I would suggest that if you have any questions about that, check the IRS website. You can do a search on publications and just say 1099 miscellaneous requirement, and it should take you right to that document, and it'll explain to you the thresholds you need to meet to either submit a 1099 miscellaneous or that you don't have to submit one.
Yeah, there seems to be a crowd consensus that $600 is the threshold.
Yep. There are.
Thank you, everybody. I can never remember what the threshold is.
There are also requirements. I believe there's no minimum, and I'm not entirely sure if this would be true for a governmental body, but normally I believe there's no minimum for rent. So if you have property that you're paying rent to, you have to send a 1099 to the landlord, and also any legal services you have to pay, because apparently they don't trust lawyers to accurately report their income.
That is true. There is no minimum threshold for those two.
Okay, and then I put in the chat the link to the DPI webpage in Wisconsin where you can sign up for a WAMS ID. And I would point out too that this is the same WAMS ID that you would use if you were entering lake water quality data into the
Yep.
DNR's data system as part of being a lake monitor.
Yep, that's correct. One WAMS ID for all. All right, if you guys don't have any other questions on stuff that I covered previously, I'll move on to the tax settlement dates.
Just one last question about that letter and certification. Robert
Sure.
Thompson commented that, he's been kind of, in a sense, getting away with just sending the letter to the town with the PC 505 attached. And the towns acknowledged the receipt and seemed to be fine with it. I mean, Dan, you were following local customs when you came across the fact that your local technical district was sending in something that looked exactly like what you have here. You just said, well, I'll just copy that. Those customs can vary around the state. And it's best to probably find out what those local customs are and stick with them.
I would agree with that. Again, I freely admit I plagiarized because I didn't know what was expected or needed. All I knew was certified letter, and I had no idea what that meant until our town clerk sent me the letter from Nicolay College. And then I went, oh, I'll just, pattern everything off of this.
And then this might be a question for Mike or you or anybody really can chime in on this, but the question is, if you hire a company to do work rather than paying an individual, do you still need to complete a 1099?
I believe it depends. If it's a corporation, you do not. If it's an individual, you do. So if also, I'm not entirely sure. I know I send 1099s to LLCs that I work with, because LLCs sometimes are corporations and sometimes are partnerships. They can choose how they do their tax, what their tax status is. So out of an abundance of caution, I just send to both.
Oh, see, and we use a lake consultant that's an LLC, and I don't send a 1099 to them. Do not send a 1099. It is only our independent, basically self-employed divers that we do the 1099 miscellaneous for. But I agree, abundance of caution isn't a bad idea.
And then this is irrelevant when you look at things like Healthy Lakes or other programs where the district may be contributing to the cost of a shoreline restoration on a private person's property. And so that check may be sent, for example, to Dan Butkus from the Lake District to offset the cost of plants or things like that. Would that invoke the need to do a 1099?
If it was above $600.
So there you go. It's a good, maybe a reason why people would set their threshold just below that.
And
That's true.
I did put a link to the IRS instructions for 1099s in the chat box. And I would also say that I wouldn't worry terribly about this. It's one of, you certainly should try to get it done. I don't actually know if there is a penalty for not filing the 1099. I've never heard of anyone that has been subject to that. I mean, imagine if you're like paying a lot of individuals a lot of money and they're not filing taxes, you might run into some trouble. But for the most part, if you miss one or two that here and there, it's probably not a big deal.
And then Dan, you might get into this in the next section, but there's a question about the lottery tax credit. Is that something that we're going to cover?
I'll get into that. Yes.
That's what I thought. Great. Then we're caught up on questions.
Cool. Good questions, everybody. I appreciate that, and I'm sorry I didn't pause sooner to address some of those. So let's see. We did that. that. Okay,
Zero
tax
one,
settlement. So the question on the lottery tax credit, that is distributed by the state to the counties, who then distribute it to the municipalities, towns, and districts. So it's basically, from what I understand, a kickback. I shouldn't say it that way, but from the lottery that helps offset property taxes. This amount that you get as a lottery tax credit, so you've gotten your town payment 15th of January, you've gotten your second town payment February 20th, and I'm going to jump down to the bottom, and you get your final tax settlement from the county. But in between there, April 15th is this lottery tax credit. You'll get a payment from the county. They take that payment and deduct it from your final tax settlement amount. So to make it easy, let's say it's $10,000 from the 15th of January, $10,000 the 20th, and you're due another $10,000 in August. Well, if the lottery tax credit's $100, down here on August 20th, you get $9,900 because they already gave you or sent you $100 from the lottery tax credit. So that tax credit offsets what the county ultimately ends up owing you on August 20th. The weird thing is, the next one, the personal property aid settlement from the county, it's a pro rata proportion of the tax collected on certain personal property used in manufacturing and business. And this is new from 2018. That settlement comes May 3rd. It does not offset the county's final settlement. And I know someone's going to ask, so what are examples of things that are personal property used in the manufacture of business? I can't tell you. I've tried to find out, and I've not gotten a straight answer from anybody. Is it a car? Is it machinery? I'm not really sure I know. And I don't know, Eric, do you have any idea what falls under that personal property aid?
I don't. I can look into it.
Well, if you find it, you're better than I am, because it just drove me crazy. I couldn't get a straight answer. And then moving down to July 20th is the computer aid settlement from the county. And that has to do if you are taking depreciation and have claimed a computer for your district. Actually, I know of one sanitary district out in western Wisconsin that filed for the computer aid settlement. It doesn't amount, none of these, the lottery tax credit, the personal property aid, or the computer aid, unless you're a huge district with, all kinds of things going on, those settlements are not going to be very large compared to your tax levy. As far as the Lake District calendar, kind of an FYI, I mentioned before the Department of Revenue's homepage, going into the special districts area under governments, signing up for the notices under the Department of Revenue. I can't stress enough, if you're doing special charges and special assessments, you need to talk to your county treasurer and real property department to get their schedule for submissions to the county. It may be easy. It may take a little more effort. And finally, I'm always willing to try to answer anybody's question, and I tried to answer someone's question this week and ended up saying, I don't know. So I'm not afraid to say I don't know. But I will certainly do my best to try to help you guys out if you've got a question. And that should just wrap up my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Dan. We'll take questions, but I actually have breaking news from the IRS. Apparently, they've decided to change the way that 1099s are filed this year. They've created a new form. Somebody had too much time being at home over the COVID break, apparently. So there is now what's called the 1099 non-employee compensation form, which, from what I can tell from skimming over these instructions, the link to which I posted in the chat earlier, it looks like it's pretty much the same stuff. It's just that most of what we were talking about is now on the 1099 NEC instead of the 1099 MISC. But it's $600 is the threshold, and that now includes for rents and for payments to attorneys. So apparently they have become more trusting of landlords and attorneys in 2020. So
well, $600 isn't anything for an attorney.
Well, that's true. That's
like
a
pocket
couple of
change.
hours of work, right? That's an email, maybe.
Sorry to any of you attorneys out there. I apologize.
So the threshold is any payment of $600 in rents, prizes and awards, other income payments. So that's kind of a catch-all. There's a bunch of cash paid from a notional principal contract to an individual partnership or estate. So I think that means if you're paying for services. And then there's some other things in the instructions as well. So all of that goes on the 1099 NEC form rather than the 1099 MISC. And I'm not sure what the MISC does anymore, but.
Well, now I learned something new. And I now have a new form that I got to worry about, but that's okay.
What I will do is I'll try to research this in a little bit more and write it up quick and send it out in an email to everyone that was on the call so that we're sure to have the right information. One should never talk about the changes to IRS things 2 minutes after they've read them, I think. It's a good rule of thumb. So do we have questions for Dan on things other than 1099 forms?
Dan, someone has a question about how that money actually gets to you. Sometimes maybe it comes by check and sometimes by direct deposit. Do you have, what's been your experience, Dan? Does it vary? And if so, do you have an understanding of why?
I do. Our two towns, Woodborough and Crescent, are not set up to do to make automatic deposits or what's called ACH or automated clearinghouse transfers. So they issue us a check. They each send us 2 checks, one in February, one in January, which when we toddle on down to the bank and deposit. But now with COVID, I can do it electronically with my phone and just deposit it. But the county prefers doing ACH, the direct deposit. So our tax settlement in August comes in via ACH.
Right, and that seems to be very important. Yep, somebody made that same observation that townships cut checks and counties make direct deposit. Bill has a question about audit. There's an audit requirement in the statute, and it's really supposed to be part of your annual meeting that an audit is presented. We've addressed this, and maybe Mike can find our Lake District Q&A from Lake Tides, where we kind of describe what this audit looks like. Statute does not define what an audit means for a lake district, and therefore it can mean a lot of different things. And you can imagine that a lake district board should feel comfortable with the audit that sort of matches the amount of money they're working with. So in the case of like Dan showed an annual budget, I think of like $16,000, it might not make sense to spend $4,000 on an audit of a budget of $16,000. We do have lake districts in the state of Wisconsin who collect revenue on the order of several $100,000. And in those cases, it may make sense to have periodically someone professionally review your books and give you an opinion on how you're doing in terms of controls and making sure that there's nothing sort of fishy in the books. The person, Bill, asked the question, says one member checks the books. And I guess I would just point out, it probably is a good idea to have that person not be a board member, but instead be someone who's not a voting member of the board, someone who's a degree separated from the board. In our advice in lake districts, or in lake tides, we suggested, if you can find someone who has an accounting background, and if this is the extent of their volunteering for the lake district, it's not too bad to have them volunteer and do the review. It does not need to be a certified audit. Public accounting does have different levels of auditing that you can get into. And we really just suggest, if there is a lot of suspicion about things, then you can bring it to the annual meeting and suggest putting it in the budget that you'd like to pay for someone to either do a review or a full audit of the accounts. But I think you'll find that it's expensive enough that you don't want to do it on a regular basis. But the question is, do you have to do it annually? And the answer is yes. It's part of the annual meeting process, is presenting an audit. So again, that person who reviews your books may just stand up, or in the case of a Zoom meeting, chime in at the end. Well, I guess you can't zoom into the annual meeting. The person would be at the annual meeting and would say, we completed an audit. We have some records here if you want to look at them, but we did not find anything troubling or problematic. I don't know, Dan, how does your audit play out at Squash Lake?
We're somewhere in the middle of the extremes. We have the town of Crescent clerk, the town clerk, is also the county clerk, and she voluntarily, because our district is partly in the town of Crescent, the town board agreed that she would audit our books, and I don't want to use the word audit, that she would perform a financial review of our books every year. They do it free of charge for us, which is awfully nice of them. She's really very good, and again, Eric and I see I've got a sunbeam cutting across my face. Let's see if I can move over. Sorry, folks. There. Because, and again, Eric and Mike know this about me, I'm obsessive compulsive, and I keep very, very meticulous records. So I present her with a very thick binder, and everything's in chronological order. And come January, after I close the books, I hand it over, and she very graciously goes through it all, checks it off, sends us a letter that, reviewed your books, everything seems to be in order. There were some minor anomalies that you need to take care of in the future, or if you can go back and correct these. And usually what it is I forget to put something, a description down in the memo field of a check. So I go back and correct that. And then we present that letter. We read it aloud to the group at the annual meeting. Does that answer your question, Eric?
Yes, sorry.
So
I muted
before,
myself again. I'm trying to put a link in the chat about Lauderdale Lakes because we referenced them in that Lake Tides article. This is another kind of general point about numbers and budgets and lake districts. The Lauderdale Lakes folks down in Southeast Wisconsin have a lot going on. They're probably more extensively involved than 90% of the lake districts in the state of Wisconsin. You can see a sense of all that they do just by looking at their webpage. But what they do is they actually post from 2013 to right now up to 2018. I can find their audited financial statements, and I can download them online. Transparency for lake districts is something we always encourage. You are local units of government. You are public entities. And so there shouldn't be any sort of sense of like, well, let's try and, not make this too publicly available. We don't want people to know what our accounts look like. I would always advise erring on the side of transparency and trying to get as much information out there as possible. Clearly, you don't want to put out information that identifies like how to tap into your bank account or what your account numbers look like. But nobody should be mystified by the financial position of the Lake District and what the annual budget is looking like. That information ought to be relatively easy to find and publicly accessible. And obviously, you all have to kind of consider for yourselves how complicated you want to get in terms of setting up web pages. We know that a good number of lake districts don't even have web pages. but I would recommend looking into that, if nothing else, just to be transparent in your financial situations.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. We have from day one really strove to be as transparent as possible, and we post our budget on our website, the approved budget. We've give anybody who wants the information, if they were to ask us for the letter, the audit letter, or sorry, financial review letter, they can have it. There's nothing secret. Our Lake District formation was not highly contentious, but it was contentious enough that we are very sensitive. We want to make sure we put people at ease, that they know that we're handling their money appropriately. And I'll also remind people, look, it's not just your money that we're handling, it's my money as well. And I'm not about to squander or waste my tax dollars myself. That's just weird. But that aside, yes, I definitely agree with the transparency.
We have a question related to special charges, Dan, that you can help out with. It just says, we're a new district this year. They plan to assess special charges of equal amounts to each landowner. Do they still need to complete the PC 505 in order to show what their total collections are, and that they kind of are under the maximum required, or do they just check in with the county treasurer?
That's a really good question, and I am not sure I have an answer. Because the PC 505 is for mill rate, I would assume the answer is either no, you don't have to fill it out, or you enter 0 on the PC 505 and then submit your special charges to the county. I really don't have an answer to that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it might vary county by county. My advice would be to talk to your county people and get an answer from them. And I'd also encourage anyone who's gone through this exact process of assessing a special charge to chime in on the chat and just give a sense of like which office in the county do you work with most closely to get that process settled. But I think you're right that the PC 505 focuses on property value and the split of the property value between multiple municipalities if there is more than one town. And then they're trying to figure out, okay, well then how would you calculate the total levy to be raised in one town versus another town?
Yep, and I used to have a contact at the Wisconsin Department of Revenue that I could rely on, but he retired, unfortunately. Very knowledgeable guy.
Is that Dave?
And Ruby.
Yeah. Did he retire?
Yeah, I think he retired.
Oof.
Yeah. Otherwise, I would call him and ask him, hey, if we do a special charge but don't have a mill rate levy, do we still have to file a PC 505? I may actually just send that blindly into the Department of Revenue as a question, and if I get an answer back, I'll feed it through Eric and Mike to the rest of you, so we have an answer.
Sure.
Gonna write myself another note.
Great. The chat includes a couple of comments just about working. You can also work with your town. If your town has a web page and they're willing to post information from your Lake District, certainly that saves you some headache. And I have noticed a lot of towns do that. But remember, that's sort of at the town's discretion. I don't think that you can force them to do that. It's another good reason to have just a nice working relationship with the town if they're willing to do things like that for you.
I know some towns that are friendly and that have done that, and I know some towns who like to keep it's that you're a separate government. We don't want to mingle that information on our webpage, so it can go either way. But yeah, approach the town.
And then Mike added some comments in there about lakekit.net, which is a service that Wisconsin Lakes offers with another group to make it easy for any lake type of group to set up a web page and maintain it on the WordPress platform.
I see Nancy gave us a thumbs up. She's one of our newest Lake Kit members. developing a site for her district. And we actually have a feature that we're able to do there where if you have files stored in a Google Drive, people will be able to access that drive directly from your web page, and then they're able to search within documents. So it makes it even a little bit easier for people to find the sorts of things that they're looking for. I do want to try to get to this question because we got a question sent to us ahead of time, and I think Bill may have to leave, and that regarded the requirements for budgeting and saving for special projects via non-lapsable funds. I'll let you two take it away.
Yeah, I mean, the identification of non-lapsable funds is the idea that a lake district can set up a non-lapsable capital account in order to accrue money over time for a big capital project. And what that is meant to do is also to say that a lake district shouldn't have like a multi-$100,000 unallocated reserve account that just seems to have no purpose other than the fact that you continue to collect revenue and have expenses that are small, and so you're building up money. Though not strictly illegal, a large unallocated reserve raises a couple of questions. Most of them are political in nature, and one of them is sort of theoretical, and it's that you're taxing people for something that they're not getting anything out of. You're taking their money from their household and moving it into a big account, and they're not getting any services out of it. On an ideal sense, your annual budget should be sort of money in, money out, that the money you're collecting in one year is sort of to pay for the services of that year, rather than trying to accrue for things. And sort of the political problem it raises is that some people come to the annual meeting and would say, hey, wait a minute, you're sitting on a big unallocated reserve. Why are we continuing to collect revenue? We should instead be spending that down. And so at an annual meeting, you may have people asking that the budget be modified to start drawing that down, or you may have people wanting to be commissioners because they want to change the financial policy of the district. The sort of political fairness of it also relates to why you might want to consider borrowing rather than saving, which is that if you think you're going to save money over 10 years for something like a new plant harvester, that might make sense. However, what you're asking people to do is to pay taxes today and for the next 10 years towards something that's going to then get purchased in the 11th year and put into service going forward. Well, the same people who pay in for that benefit may not be the ones who actually receive the benefit. So they may sell the property, they may pass away, but they paid in and chipped in for this new harvester that they never actually get to see put into operation. If you flip that around and instead were to borrow for that same project, yes, there's a transaction fee associated with like the interest rate, but when you borrow that money and buy the harvester today, then the people over the next 10 years who benefit from the harvester's existence are the same people paying for the debt of getting that harvester. So it's much more tightly connected that those who benefit are the same people paying. And in a high interest rate environment, that gets harder to justify or harder to explain. If you had to borrow money at 20% interest or 25% interest, then you'd say, well, those transaction costs are kind of a pain. And really, if we were to save and we earned that kind of interest, then it might make more sense. We haven't had an interest rate environment like that for a long time. And it did exist in the early 1980s. But these days, interest rates are extremely low for renting, or for borrowing for Lake District projects. And we also have, and Mike, maybe you can find the link that you can put in there real quick, the Board of Commissioners of Public Land in the state of Wisconsin is really set up to loan money to lake districts at very reasonable terms. The revenue that they generate, actually, the interest that they receive, they turn around then and actually grant that back to the public school libraries in the state of Wisconsin to help them acquire new books and new materials. So it's not really even a bank, but that lending facility is only available to lake districts and other local units of government. So we'd encourage you to check that out as an option. So it's kind of it's a philosophical thing, it's a public finance theory thing, but it's also a political problem if you are accumulating a bunch of money and people want to change their mind about what to do with it.
Say, Eric, we have a question I've been monitoring while you were explaining. We have another one, and this comes from Scott, and there were follow-ups from several people. Is there no such thing as a contingency fund, and are called earmarks at the end of the year for specific potential use? How much of an unallocated reserve can be related to annual budget? Follow-up, we never know how much we have to spend for milfoil treatments, budget for an average cost. So have a reserve fund to draw from and then have to decide at the annual meeting whether to reimburse the fund or not. Is this legit?
Sure.
And then our non-lapsable fund of $110,000 is allocated for AIS emergency treatment. We deposit 10 grand per year from our taxes into this fund. I was going to answer this because the thread was really interesting to me because it's stuff that I've wrestled with, and you touched on in your answer. And that is, money in, money out, net sum zero. And, you should try to maintain a minimum balance. But Eric, you know that I had these questions early on because, can we have a contingency fund? How much is appropriate? We always have carryover because we deal with a lot of DNR grants. And actually right now I'm working on a reimbursement, that's going to get us $20,000. Well, okay, I have to spend the money first for our district. And then at the very end of the year, I get a check and 20 grand lands in our lap. And now I carry over 20 grand, and it looks weird to people when they see that at the annual meeting. And so you really have to explain to people that, we spend the money first and we get reimbursed from the DNR. That ends up in our lap at the end of the year. We carry that over next year as revenue for milfoil, Eurasian water milfoil treatment. But getting back to the contingency fund, our district does, right or wrong, we do have a contingency fund, and it's about 3 or 4 months worth of expenses that are general government expenses. They're not program expenses like milfoil control or reestablishing a shoreline or something like that. It is for things like paper clips, copying, postage, our insurance. We have a legal fee portion that we set aside every year just in case we need services from an attorney. So 25% of that general government operation, basically what I call turning on the lights of a lake district, is what we hold in reserve as a just in case. I budgeted a certain amount for next year. I budgeted back in June and July, what our insurance cost is going to be a year from June, July. In 2021, I have no idea. The insurance company may jack our rates. And if we don't have a contingency fund to cover it, then we're short cash. We took a look around. The counties and the towns generally keep 2, 3, 4 months worth of general government operating costs as a reserve for that kind of an emergency. So let me go back. And yet we never know how much we have to spend for milfoil treatment. Remember when I put up that first slide after the intro slide and it had Professor Trelawney in front of a crystal ball? Yes, that's the life of a district treasurer. We think we know what we're going to spend next year for ourselves on milfoil control based on this year and the past 3 years. I can guarantee you every time we've approached it, we've been wrong. It's a moving target. It's really hard to hit. And so having that cash reserve there just in case is not necessarily a bad idea, but ours ended up growing a little too large for my comfort, and I've been trying to work that down because I don't want to have to explain to our owners. Why are you sitting on so much cash? Can you justify it? And if my answer is, yeah, I really can't justify it, I'm in trouble. So I watch that like a hawk, and I try to keep that tamped down as much as I can within reason. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see, that'd be Scott, Joseph, and Ellen.
And I would just add to that, I mean, what you said makes sense, that it needs to be a percentage of your budget in a sense. Like if you said 3 months out of a 12-month cycle, you're talking about 25% really.
Yeah.
The university was told by the legislature that we should keep our reserves under, I think, 11%. And ideally they'd like to see them closer to 0%. I think we're getting there right now. It's getting kind of crazy. The notion though that, again, the one person commented that they might have over $100,000 set aside and they keep adding $10,000 to it. That's where I might caution taking your foot off the gas on that and reappraising what's going on there, because again, even if you were to say buy a new piece of equipment or make a huge investment in an aquatic plant treatment to do chemical treatment, the people who are going to benefit from that are the people that year and going forward. And so even if you had to borrow money to cover those costs, you're better off because the people going forward are the ones who are going to benefit from the expense. The people who've been chipping into this account, they might not be around. They might not be the ones who actually benefit from that money being expended. So take a look at thinking about how to take your foot off the gas and putting that money in there. Oftentimes I don't
want to argue with you, Eric, but I'm going to a little bit.
Sure.
When it comes to a non-lapsable fund it's allocated for AIS emergency treatment, that could, and I don't know anything about Ellen's Lake District, but I can foresee that there are certain lakes that either herbicidal treatment or a weed harvester, and the operation of a weed harvester, maybe there's a really bad year and there's way too many invasive species, and they have to spend extra money. In order to get a loan, you've got to get the approval from the owners to take a loan.
Yeah.
So okay, it's now it's beginning of July. Your annual meeting is scheduled in August, and oh my goodness, things are out of control, and we need to spend some extra money taking care of the milfoil problem. It can't wait till August to get an approval to get a loan, and even trying to call a special meeting, that requires the same notification. So you just kind of push things out. And again, not knowing what the specifics of that, $110,000, depending on the size of the district, the size of the lake, the size of the problem, might actually be appropriate.
Sure. But I guess I'm cautious about the continuing to accrue more money there without maybe at some point you might want to get an estimate, like what could this really cost us, rather than just a default mechanism of just keep adding $10,000 and let's see just how big that kitty can get. Someone does have the question about, does the borrowing need to be approved? It should be it has to be approved at either an annual or special meeting. The Board of Commissioners of Public Land and really any bank, I think, is going to want to see verification that the borrowing was properly approved.
I checked with the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands because we were investigating a loan for a land purchase and what the requirements were. And you have to have a resolution that is appropriately signed with the vote on the resolution, the vote count. So they need documentation that you held a meeting, that it was approved, and you can move forward making the loan.
That could conceivably happen in a special meeting, though, correct?
Correct.
So it's still not
the advantage of a special meeting is that you can hold that one virtually.
That's true. That's a topic for another session, but
yeah. And someone had questions about insurance, and Mike, that almost to me says maybe we could do an insurance session and bring in some people who have some background too, specifically in insurance for local units of government, to do a similar presentation like this. I don't want to get in. I just posted the link to Chapter 7, and some people have comments to Chapter 7 of People of the Lakes. Insurance can be a very complex topic. So
Yeah,
put that on.
definitely. I think we have some contacts with the Horton Group. We are Wisconsin Lakes offers for associations. I often get this question, is why I bring it up. Wisconsin Lakes offers an umbrella policy for associations that they can buy into for D&O. They can't do that for districts because of the governmental body issue. But Horton primarily insures municipalities and local governments. So we could definitely do that and bring someone in to talk about it.
Can I ask everybody to thank me and or to join me in giving a virtual thank you to Dan? There's a little applause button down in the reactions of your Zoom box. If you
Thank
click on
you.
that, if you thought that Dan did a good job helping us out, please give him applause. And some people are saying, woohoo, Dan. Did we have other things that we need to touch on, Mike, before we wrap up?
Before you do that, I just want to thank you guys. I'm one of those presenters. I enjoy being in front of people presenting, and doing it virtually. I don't get the interaction, the feedback immediately, and so I really appreciate the thanks. Thank you.
And thank you, Mike, for setting up the Zoom and hosting us. I appreciate that too.
You bet. I just want to remind everybody to share my screen one more time to save the date for March 8th to 12th next year. That's our Wisconsin Water Week, which is the sort of expanded virtual version of the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention. Will be online, but it'll be with multiple additional bells and whistles from what we did back in April. That we just think about it. We put that thing together in what, 3 weeks, Eric?
Yeah, at the most.
We've got like 7 months, so it'll be amazing.
We're going to make it interesting. We're probably going to detach the types of workshops that we're doing now are probably going to be detached from Water Week a little bit. We're not going to subject someone to a 3-hour workshop as part of that online event. And that's also like I'm saying right now, if Mike and I can put together like an insurance workshop for October or November, we'll just get that out there and try and use our contacts now to get it in front of as many people as possible so that people can come in and get their questions answered.
Yeah, and if there are other topics that you're interested in, feel free to send them to either of us, either Eric or me. All right.
Okay, I got to go feed the dogs.
Eric's got to go feed the dogs. I got to go feed myself. I don't know what Dan has to feed, and y'all should go eat too. So thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you all soon.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.